Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. Kayla knocked her wine glass against the table and stared at him. The sharp noise sliced through the small talk at once. I looked up and her eyes were fixed on my husband. She said his first name twice and dragged each syllable out. The whole table froze, but my heart took off running. I am Emma, 32, and this was my normal life ending. My sister Lily sat across from me with her fork raised. Mark kept chewing like he had not heard his own name. He heard it the third time and his jaw finally stopped. Kayla leaned forward with both elbows planted like she owned the night. Do you remember that house party near campus 13 years ago? She did not raise her voice, and somehow it was louder than anything else. No one answered her, so the room filled with this awful waiting. Lily glanced at me, then at Mark, like she wanted to crawl under the table. I gave a weak laugh that did not sound like me at all. Kayla watched that little laugh die in my throat and did not blink. This is not a joke. Kayla spoke like she had practiced the line on her way over. You grabbed me at that party, and you know exactly who I am. Her words dropped one by one, and I felt each one land on my marriage. Mark pushed his chair back an inch like someone had kicked the legs. What are you talking about? He gave a short laugh that sounded more like a cough that hurt. If this is some weird bit, it is not funny. You followed me upstairs when I went to look for Lily that night. You cornered me in that spare bedroom and locked the door behind us. You pushed me onto the bed while I kept saying I wanted to leave. You covered my mouth with your hand and laughed when I cried afterward. The fork slipped out of Lily's hand and hit the plate with a sharp clink. She whispered my name like a warning, but I could not look away. Mark's face went flat and cold, the way it does right before he lies. Back then I still trusted that face more than my own gut. Now while I write this, I want to shake my past self. In that moment, though, I grabbed at the quickest explanation that did not wreck my life. Maybe she mixed him up with someone else, or she was drunk, or this was twisted payback for some old slight. I chose the version where my husband was innocent and my sister stayed on my side. Mark stood up fast enough to push his chair back against the wall. This is insane, and I am not sitting here for it. He grabbed his keys from the counter and told me to come with him now. Everyone watched me stand up, and I swear I felt the whole night tilt. Lily reached for my wrist and missed because I stepped back too fast. Emma, please do not go with him right now, her voice cracked around my name. Kayla just watched me, one hand still flat on the table like she needed it to stay upright. I walked toward the door anyway and felt something important tear, not loud but final. In the car he drove in silence, knuckles tight around the wheel. I kept hearing her voice say you covered my mouth, and I kept trying to edit the memory that was not mine. Now I see that drive as the moment I chose him completely. I did not know yet that the story inside that car would not match the one waiting outside of it. He cut the engine and gripped the wheel like it might jump. Do you believe that garbage? His voice snapped in the small space. I still had my hand on the door handle and could not move. The house looked normal through the windshield and felt miles away. I finally climbed out and he was already at the front steps. His keys shook in the lock, and that scared me more than his anger. Inside, he kicked his shoes aside and turned on me in the hallway. Tell me right now you know she made that up. My throat closed and my brain tried to sprint in 3 directions. I do not know anything yet, the answer slipped out before I could stop it. He took a step closer like he had not expected that line from me. It hit me then that I was the one on trial in our house. Emma, she is lying, his hands cut the air between us. She has always been obsessed with me, you saw her tonight. I had not actually seen that, but he kept going before I could argue. If you let her get between us, that is exactly what she wants. I thought of Kayla's face across the table, how steady she stayed. I thought of Lily's hand missing my wrist when I walked out. My stomach rolled and still I heard myself reach for him. Then explain it, because I need more than she is crazy. He dragged a chair out and dropped into it like his legs failed. We went to the same college, we hung out a few times. She came on way too strong and I shut it down, that is all. He rubbed his forehead and added one more thing that stuck like a burr. She could not handle rejection. Some people build whole stories around that. My mind jumped back to Kayla listing specific actions in front of my family. That did not sound like a crush story, it sounded like a script. Rehearsed for years. Still, I let his version sit on top because it hurt less. So there was never a bedroom, never a locked door, nothing like that. The word scraped my tongue on the way out. He flinched at the word bedroom like I had slapped him. No, absolutely not, we never hooked up, she is twisting it. He stood again and paced to the counter and back in short lines. Think about it, why wait over a decade to drop this bomb? If something real happened, she would have gone to the cops back then. I swallowed hard because I wanted that timeline to save us. Maybe she did, the thought slipped out barely above a whisper. He stopped walking like his feet glued to the floor. And maybe I flew to the moon, he barked out an empty laugh. If there was any report, my life would have blown up already. I did not know how any of that worked in real life, and he knew it. He looked right at me with that exhausted husband face that always disarmed me. I have never laid a hand on a woman like that in my life. He touched his chest once, quick and almost desperate, and waited for my verdict. My head pounded and I could hear the blood in my ears. I wanted to rewind dinner and make Kayla stay home and keep Lily out of it. I need to hear everything, I said, because that sounded like a responsible wife. Inside, what I really wanted was a version of events that let me stay married. He stepped closer and lowered his voice like the walls might repeat us. She cornered me at a party, she tried to kiss me, I pulled away. She cried, got dramatic, accused me of leading her on in front of friends. That night wrecked her ego, now she is trying to wreck my life. I watched his mouth form each detail and tried to catch any tremor. Nothing obvious showed, which honestly made me more uneasy. Kayla's story and his story lived side by side in my head like clashing radio stations. I chose to turn his up because I did not know how to live with hers. He reached for my hands and I let him take them. If you start doubting me over some old drama, we are done. It came out not as a threat, more like a plea hooked to fear. Please do not make me fight both her and you at the same time. That line hit a weak spot I did not know I still had. I had built my whole adult life around being the reasonable one. The partner who did not overreact, who checked facts, who stayed calm. The idea of becoming the suspicious wife made my skin crawl. Okay, I heard myself say, even though my thoughts were nowhere near okay. I am not turning on you based on one outburst at dinner. His shoulders dropped at once and he let out a long, shaky breath. He heard commitment, I heard a door closing behind me. He pulled me into a tight hug and pressed his face into my shoulder. We will get ahead of this if we have to, we can talk to Lily. The word we felt heavy because I already knew I would carry most of that. I also knew I had just chosen a side without really checking the ground. Later in the dark, he slid closer and spoke into the space between us. If she starts telling people, they will look at you differently too. They will wonder what kind of woman stays with a guy like that. That detail struck harder than any denial, and I hate how much it worked. I lay there, eyes open, listening to his breathing even out. My mind ran through every friend who might hear Kayla before they heard us. I pictured people whispering, wondering, measuring me next to her story. In that twisted little competition, I decided I could not afford to lose. So I whispered it into the room, almost like a spell I needed to stick. I believe you, the words tasted dry and metallic on my tongue. He reached for my hand in the dark and squeezed once, then drifted off. I stared at the ceiling and felt a crack open that I refused to name yet. On the third morning, I pulled our old laptop from the closet. My hands shook so much I had to set it on the floor first. I told myself I was just organizing files, not prying into his past. I already knew exactly whose name I was going to type. I opened his college account and typed Kayla into the search bar. Dozens of results popped up faster than I could blink. Study groups and ride plans showed up with jokes about professors in long threads. One subject line mentioned that house party and my throat went dry. I clicked that thread and watched old messages fill the screen. He offered her a ride both ways and reminded her to bring her favorite drink. She replied with a string of exclamation points and called him trouble. I stared at that promise and felt my stomach twist hard. He had told me they rarely spoke and only in groups. Here he was offering rides, flirting and making plans just for the two of them. My brain tried to label it harmless banter so I would not fall apart. Instead, I bookmarked the thread and felt something in me shift. That night I waited until he slept before opening the old photo folder. I searched his graduating year and scrolled through group shots from campus events. Near the end, there was a picture of him with his arm around her shoulders. I zoomed in until their faces blurred and my pulse hammered. He had described her as some clingy acquaintance who would not take a hint. Nothing in that picture looked one-sided, at least not to my eyes. I saved the image to a separate folder with a useless neutral name. I did not know yet if I was preserving evidence or storing poison. The next morning I cracked eggs and asked how often he saw her during school. He shrugged and said they ran into each other at parties once or twice. My mind tossed up the ride offers and late-night threads in answer. I did not correct him, I just counted how easily the lie rolled out. I tried again while we cleaned up, keeping my tone light. I asked if they ever shared classes and pretended it was idle curiosity. He said he could not remember and laughed like I was being paranoid. I watched his face more than I listened, and every easy answer scraped me raw. That evening I went back to the laptop like a moth to a flame I did not trust. I opened social media and searched her profile, half expecting it to be gone. Her page was active with recent photos and updates about promotions and trips. Buried deep in her friends list, I found his old name sitting there. He had never removed her, not in all those years of supposed distance. My chest tightened in this ugly mix of jealousy and dread, and something like shame. I clicked their mutual friends and saw my sister right at the top. It hit me that I might be the only one still pretending not to see the connection. I scrolled further and found an old group photo she had uploaded from a graduation weekend. He had commented underneath that it was the best year of his life and used 3 heart emojis. Another comment from her joked about him owing her a drink for driving everyone home. I stared at that little joke about rides and knew none of this matched his careful story. Headlights swept across the window and I slammed the laptop shut on reflex. My heart pounded loud enough that I was sure he would hear it through the door. I tucked the computer under the couch cushion and tried to look normal in the kitchen. That was the moment I realized I had crossed from loyal wife into undercover detective in my own home. He walked in, dropped his keys, asked how my night had been. I heard my voice answer on autopilot and ask about his day at work. Then I slipped in one more question about college friends, just casual background noise. He paused for a fraction of a second before answering, and that tiny stutter rang louder than anything else. The following night I could not stop thinking about that photo of them shoulder to shoulder. I printed it at work during lunch and slipped it into my bag under some receipts. At home, I laid it on the table between us like a playing card. He glanced down at it, then back at me, and his whole expression tightened. "You told me she was basically a stranger. She is right under your arm in this shot." Everyone posed like that at those events. The dismissive flick of his wrist sent a cold spark racing up my arms. I brought up the ride messages and the party invitations I had read. His eyes narrowed and he asked why I was snooping through his private stuff. "Because Kayla accused you of assault in front of my family and your version keeps changing." Saying that out loud made the whole room tilt, and I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. "You are twisting harmless flirting into some conspiracy now," he laughed, but there was no humor. He reminded me that I had promised to trust him and not feed her drama. The word drama lodged in my chest because nothing about her face at that dinner had looked like theater. I heard myself breathe faster and knew I was inches from choosing a different reality. "I am not twisting anything, I am reading your actual words from that night. If you lied about knowing her, what else are you glossing over?" He went quiet then, and that silence scared me more than his earlier shouting. He finally muttered that he was done having this argument and walked out of the room. I stayed at the table with the printout between my elbows and tried not to cry on it. I was still telling myself I wanted to clear his name, not build a case against him. Looking back, that was the night my loyalty cracked for real. I had started as his defender, and without knowing it, I was already crossing the line toward believing her. I called Lily twice before lunch and she hung up both times. On the third try, she let it ring until the last second and answered with a clipped hello. "We need to talk about what happened at dinner." My voice shook and I hated it. Silence stretched so long I checked the screen to see if the call dropped. "I am at work." Her words came out stiff like she was Rhea. Ding from a card. "This cannot wait." I walked into the bathroom and locked the door. "Either we meet today or I am showing up at your place." There was another long pause and I could hear her breathing like she was bracing for impact. "Fine," she blew out air in a rough gust. "After my shift, the old mall lot, you know, the back corner." She hung up before I could answer and I stared at my reflection. I already knew this talk would change more than she wanted to admit. That evening, I pulled into the far end of the lot and saw her car already there. She sat behind the wheel with her hands at 10 and 2 like she was driving nowhere. I parked beside her and for a second neither of us moved. My chest tightened in that stupid guilty way even though I had done nothing yet. I got in on the passenger side and shut the door too hard. She kept her face turned toward the windshield like I was a cop instead of her sister. "Thanks for coming," I started, and the polite line sounded ridiculous even to me. "We are not doing small talk," she answered, and her fingers dug into the steering wheel. "How long have you known what she told us the other night?" I went straight for it because I did not trust myself to build up slowly. Her eye twitched like I had thrown something heavy at her instead of a sentence. "Do you really want the exact answer to that?" Her voice dropped low on the last word. "Yes, I need the full timeline." My palms were damp against my jeans. She finally turned her head and looked at me, eyes red at the edges. "The next morning," she whispered, and my stomach lurched like the car had moved. "She came to my dorm at 6 and could barely stand." I gripped the door handle to steady myself and made her keep going. "She told me he locked the door and forced her onto that bed. She told me she could not breathe when he covered her mouth with his hand." Hearing those sentences from my sister's mouth hit different than hearing them at dinner. I felt this hot flash of anger rise, and it was not aimed where you think. "You heard all that back then, and you did not tell me anything later." She flinched and looked down at her lap like a scolded kid. "I did not know you two would even stay together," she muttered, and it sounded weak even to her. I leaned in closer, voice sharper than I had ever used with her. "You watched me build a whole life with him while you carried this. Why did you not warn me when I could still step away?" The question hung between us like smoke that would not clear. She wiped under one eye with the back of her hand. "We actually went to campus security that week," she said, and my breath caught. "You what?" The words came out louder than I meant and bounced off the windows. "They took a statement from her and from me and said they would look into it." My vision blurred for a second and I had to blink hard. "Why did you never mention any of this to me?" "Not once. They wrote everything down and promised to contact us if they needed more." Her mouth twisted. "No one ever called, nothing happened, and she was tired of reliving it." I tried to picture my sister sitting in some cramped office, telling a stranger that story. For a second I almost felt sorry for that younger version of her too. "She wanted to forget," Lily went on, her voice flatter now like she was narrating a movie. "I told her maybe it was for the best to move forward and focus on graduating." "You told her to let it go." My words came out like a verdict, not a question. She slammed one palm against the steering wheel and startled both of us. I was 20, I was scared, and I did not trust the system to help her. Her voice cracked. "Every choice I made that week feels wrong now." I looked at her profile and tried to line it up with the sister who always defended me growing up. "At what point did you connect him with her story?" I asked, because I needed that piece. She bit her lip until it turned white. "The first night you brought him home for dinner," she whispered, and my throat burned. "So you recognized the guy from her story sitting at our table, years later. And you watched us get engaged and married and you still held your tongue." She squeezed her eyes shut and nodded once like she was signing a contract. "I told myself maybe she remembered wrong. I told myself you looked happy." That line almost hurt more than anything Kayla had said. "You trusted his face over her words because I seemed fine with him." A A bitter laugh slipped out, ugly and short. Do you have any idea how insane that sounds now? She turned on me with sudden heat in her eyes. You think I do not lie awake replaying that first dinner every week? I froze. I panicked, and I did exactly what everyone hopes women will do. I stayed quiet. Her voice was shaking, but she did not look away anymore. So where do you stand now? I asked, because that was the real test. Do you believe what she said? About that night today right now. Lily swallowed hard and nodded just once, and that simple movement shattered something in me. I believed her then, I believe her more now. I just hated what it meant for you. I stared at the dashboard and felt this heavy numbness replace the earlier rush of anger. You let me walk into that marriage blind to something that could destroy it. And I let myself stay blind because it was easier than asking hard questions. I hated that my own sentence pulled me into the mess with them. She took a breath and dropped the last piece between us like it weighed a ton. I was in love with him too back then, she said, barely above a whisper. The world tilted and settled again while I processed that new hit. I did not want her story to be true, because then I would have to hate the same man I wanted. For a second I just stared, because I truly had no script for that confession. You were jealous of your own friend, and you convinced yourself she exaggerated. Not because you thought she lied, but because you could not stand losing your fantasy. Hearing it out loud made my skin crawl, and I still was not sure who disgusted me more. She nodded, tears spilling now, not pretty ones. I cut her out slowly after graduation. I told myself we were just drifting. Really, I hated seeing her because every time I did, I remembered what she told me and how I did nothing. Her hands trembled on the wheel, and I realized she was afraid I would walk out of her life the same way. You know, this changes everything, I said quietly, and it felt like an understatement. I cannot go home and pretend this is some random smear campaign anymore. She wiped her face and asked if I was going to confront him with what she had shared. I nodded and knew this was the last calm conversation before our family exploded. When I stepped out of the car, the air felt different, heavier somehow. Lily called my name, and I leaned down to look at her through the open window. If you leave him, she said, I will back you up with everything I know. Her voice shook. If you stay, I do not know how to stand next to you and keep breathing. Driving away, my hands were steady for the first time since that dinner. I was not calm, but the confusion had burned off into something sharper. I knew now there had been a report, witnesses, and my own sister's buried belief. The only thing left was to hear what he would say when I put all of that in front of him. I dropped my bag on the kitchen table and spread the papers out. They were not real records, just my notes from talking to Lily. I still laid them down like evidence anyway, lined up and ready. My hands finally stopped trembling when I heard his car in the driveway. He walked in, saw the pages, and froze halfway to the sink. What is all this? His eyes jumped from one sheet to another. We are finishing the conversation you walked away from last time. My voice came out low and steady, and that surprised both of us. I met Lily today. I tapped the top page with one finger. She told me everything you did not want me to hear. His jaw flexed once and he tossed his keys onto the counter. Let me guess, she is backing up Kayla now. She is backing up the version she shared 13 years ago. We both know that part matters. I kept my gaze right on him. They went to campus security the week after that party and gave statements. They wrote it all down, and you were the name in that report. He flinched, just a quick twitch around his mouth, but I caught it. You do not know what is in any file. He folded his arms tight. Those offices are full of complaints that go nowhere. He tried to shrug, but his shoulders stayed tight like wires. So you admit there was a complaint with your name on it? I stepped closer, pushing before he could slip away again. You told me she would have gone to the police if it was real. Turns out she did exactly what women are told to do. He ran a hand through his hair and laughed once, harsh and short. They asked me to come in that week. It was nothing serious. They said there was a misunderstanding after a party and wanted my side. I told them she got upset when I would not hook up, that was it. Hearing that knocked the air out of me more than if he had yelled. So you lied to my face when you swore no one ever called you. You sat right here and told me there was no record at all. He opened his mouth, then closed it, and that silent beat said plenty. I did not think it counted as anything official. His voice dropped. They did not suspend me, they did not arrest me, they just talked. After that, everyone moved on. I thought we had too. He leaned on the back of a chair like he suddenly needed the support. I picked up one of my notes and read the line I had underlined 3 times. She told them you blocked the door and covered her mouth while she cried. I looked back at him, and my vision tunneled for a second. Did you touch her like that, or did she invent that part from thin air? He swallowed and stared past me at the wall, like the answer might appear there. We were both plastered that night, the whole house was buzzing. Things got heated, she freaked out halfway through, I tried to calm her. The word calm made my skin prickle, and I fought the urge to throw something. Did she say no? My voice cracked on that single word. Out loud more than once, in a way you could actually hear. He dragged in a breath and forced himself to meet my eyes. She said she felt weird, she told me to slow down, I thought it was just nerves. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips now, sharp and insistent. That is not an answer to what I asked. He rubbed his forehead like he could scrub the memory out. She said stop once, maybe twice, I thought she did not mean it. There it was, the line that finally killed whatever doubt I had left. You thought she did not mean it, so you kept going anyway. He flared, voice rising for the first time that day. Everyone was reckless back then, no one thought about this stuff like now. I laughed and it came out rough and cold from somewhere deep. You keep changing the story and somehow you are always the one excused. First she fantasized it, then she chased you, now she was just nervous. At no point do you land on you hurt her and it mattered. He slammed his hand on the table, and the sound shot through my chest. I never woke up planning to hurt anyone, do you get that? I was drunk, stupid, and thought she was on the same page. I realized she was crying after and I froze, I did not know what to do. So you just left her there and walked back downstairs. The image made my stomach twist for real this time, not just as a phrase. He looked away and his silence answered me long before his words did. Yeah, I went back to the party, I could not handle the scene. I pressed my fingers against my temples, trying to hold my thoughts still. She spent the night thinking she had been assaulted by a friend. You spent the night getting another drink and telling yourself it was messy. You see why I cannot treat those 2 nights like the same experience. He stared at me with something close to panic now, all the bravado gone. I did not know she went to any office, I swear to you. If someone had told me back then, maybe I would have apologized. The way he said maybe made my throat burn. An apology 13 years ago would not erase anything anyway. Right now I am more interested in the fact you lied to me last week. You knew you had crossed a line and still brand me as disloyal for asking questions. That part actually hurt more than the old story, which was its own problem. He reached for my hand and I took a step back so fast my heel hit the cabinet. Look at me, you know who I am now. I lost touch with those people, I grew up, I built a life with you. He moved closer again, like he could sell me a different version by sheer proximity. That is the point, I said, and my voice steadied again. I thought I knew who I married, turns out I only knew the parts you liked. You can call it a mistake or a misunderstanding or whatever helps you sleep. I am calling it something else, something I cannot live next to anymore. He dropped his hands and just stared at me, blank for a second. What are you going to do, ruin both our lives over one night? The way he said our lives made clear he still saw himself at the center. That finally pushed me right over the edge I had been circling. I already called a lawyer, the words left my mouth before I could soften them. Not about charges, about getting out of this marriage in one piece. His face drained and then flushed again so fast it almost looked like a trick. You are divorcing me because of a story from college. I am leaving because you hurt someone and then lied about it for years. I am leaving because when she spoke up, your first instinct was to smear her. I am leaving because when I asked for honesty, you treated me like an enemy. I felt oddly calm saying it, like my body realized the decision before my brain did. He paced to the window and back, breathing hard like he had run a mile. So that is it, you walk out and let them slap some label on me forever. You do realize people will talk about you too, you will not come out clean. He thought that warning might keep me in place, and a month ago it might have worked. Let them talk, I said, and I almost believed myself. If staying means looking away from what you did, I will live with the whispers. I would rather be the woman who left than the woman who helped bury her story. That was the first sentence that felt completely right in my mouth. I picked up my bag again and added one small overnight case beside it. I had packed the essentials that morning before. Meeting Lily just in case. Back then it still felt dramatic, now it felt like the only sane move. He watched every motion like he could will me to stop without touching me. As I reached for the door, one last thought hit me and it came out before I could filter it. I am going to call Kayla when I leave here. I do not know what I can fix, but I can at least stop pretending I never heard her. He flinched at her name again, and I knew I had finally chosen who I believed. I stepped outside and the air hit my face like a wake-up slap. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Lily checking if I was still breathing. I did not pick up yet, I just walked to my car and set the bag inside. Behind me, the house stood exactly the same, but the life inside it was over.